shared, like they mentioned, on the YouTube. Okay, there we go. Thank you. So, like I mentioned, my name is Ashley. My pronouns are she, her. I am an intervention specialist and teacher at North High. I originally started off as an English teacher. And then after a couple of years, I went back to school for school counseling. And so that's kind of how I moved into the intervention specialist position. And now I am also teaching a class called College and Career Seminar for some of our students, which is kind of like an avid class. And so I come at this from a few different lenses, actually, as an English teacher, just kind of in the classroom, and then interventions and sort of the school counseling realm, and then also a little bit avid light world. I was actually really thankful to be in the classroom this last fall, for my college and career seminar class, because I don't think that I would have fully understood the difficulties of distance learning. And so without actually being in the classroom and having my advisory in my college and career seminar. So I am really excited to talk about this with everybody and discuss social emotional learning check-ins. It's something that I feel really passionate about. So I have a slide on norms, which I know we don't really need as educators, but I like to model it anyways, just as something that you might want to use with your students if you don't already, about participating positively, reiterating the use of the chat for questions. Questions are totally welcome. Comments are welcome too. If you want to direct it to a certain person, I love the sort of norm of using the @ sign to direct it to that particular person, so it kind of clarifies. And if you have a question, you can put the question mark just so I kind of see it in the chat immediately, and it'll kind of alert me to double check that. And of course, we're old hat at this, to mute yourself if you're not speaking. And as we saw earlier, if there are technical difficulties, we will keep calm and carry on. I don't know about you, but I've been kicked out of class. Like one day I was kicked out 3 times in a row, and it was stressful, but we manage. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start us off with a check and connect, and I'm going to be doing these actual SEL check-ins with y'all just because A, it's fun and I like to learn about everybody, and hopefully you want to connect with each other, and B, that's what I do with my students. So it's kind of the exact practices that I'm already doing. What I'm going to ask is, what's a rose and a thorn that you had in the fall regarding distance learning? I had no idea how many people were going to come to this session, so we have a lot. We do not, unfortunately, have time to go through every single person. In my regular class, I will tell you that I literally have every single student answer. And it does take long. I will not lie. It does take a while. It's a chunk of like 20 minutes of time, but I feel that it's time well spent. And so I'm happy to use that time. In this session of 48, that will take our whole session. So unfortunately, I won't do the check-in with everybody. I will show you, though, I have the Wheel of Names, which, if you haven't used it yet, is a really fun way to call on students. If you have your roster of all of your students already named, you can just kind of throw them in. I will show you what that looks like. I have it linked in the presentation as well. And I'm going to throw a few people's names in it. So if you want to be called on, let me know, because I'll throw your name in there. And then I'll also throw in some names at random. So you might be somebody who's called on. What I do, though, with my regular students is I just have the roster actually named so that I know that I'm going to have all of the students answered for. Okay. So what I'll do is I'm going to use the Wheel of Names to call on some folks to share out their rose and their thorn. Rose is a positive or a win. Thorn is a negative or a challenge, and I can share that for me. A rose I had this past semester was definitely getting chances to connect with students in new ways. I really enjoyed having advisory. I really thought it was cool how some of those kids who I think usually would be in their shell really liked the opportunity to have that personal chat very easily through GoGuardian. So that was really, really fun. A thorn I had was definitely just trying to find that work-life balance, because it was difficult living and working in the same place. And so I'll show you what the Wheel of Names looks like. I'm just grabbing a few people's names and throwing them in. So you might be somebody I call on, and hopefully you don't mind sharing if you are. Okay, so I'm just adding like 3 more. Let's go with, who do I not have already? Okay, so with the Wheel of Names, if you haven't seen it already, it is not an extension, it's just a website. It's really cool. So you can add however many names you need here. When you add a bunch, the little slices become very, very small. You can also put a question there. So if you wanted this to be a wheel of questions, like would you rather question or getting to know you question, it's another really fun way to use this tool. And it's just the website. So you can save them if you want to save your roster, which is cool. Okay, so we're going to call on our first person for the Wheel of Names. What is your rose and what is your thorn? Ta-da-da! Brian, perfect timing. If you could unmute yourself, if you wouldn't mind, or if you are unable to unmute yourself, you can put it in the chat. What was your wheel? I mean, sorry, what was your rose and your thorn for this semester?
That's really a tough one, the rose, because it seems like so long ago. I can't tell you, it's not a school thing, but my daughter received an early admissions to San Diego State right before Christmas, and that's really been the big thing. So let me keep moving backwards. Yeah, that was really cool, by the way. So yeah, we'll see how that goes.
Congratulations.
One of the things too, I coach basketball and tennis at Rancho San Juan too. So one of the things I could say moving back is the kids for the most part seem to be keeping pretty positive. Now maybe we have a unique situation. We don't have seniors yet, so they're not feeling like, but I would say the most part is the kids, and they I sense that the kids seem like they're kind of, at least speaking for myself, like they're in it with you. They all get that we're all struggling, so it seems like we're all kind of in the same flotilla, and the kids seem to kind of get that too. So that would be my rose.
Thank you for sharing. Did you have any thorns you wanted to share?
I would say my thorn is, I won't tell you my age, but I was around before, cable TV existed. So I think one of the things that's like picking, and this is one thing I would ask you, what is one or two, things to use? Because I feel like technology, and I definitely feel an age difference. Like, when I bought a car or an app or a stereo, I wanted it to last my lifetime. My kids want a new Apple phone every 6 months. That's a big difference in how a mode of operandi, let's say. So I would like to get things and use them. And I even feel like today, I probably heard 10 things that I may or may not know. And so I'm of the less is more, but it's hard finding less when we're offered so much more. So that would be one of my thorn bushes. So,
yes, I agree. It can be really, really overwhelming sometimes.
And good morning. I'm kind of chillaxing. So good morning.
Good morning. My thing about using tech is I find what I like the best, and I use that and try to be an expert. So you'll see with my examples for the check-ins, I simply use Google Forms because that's easy for me, and then Google Classroom. But if somebody has another platform that they love, I highly encourage you to make it work to fit whichever platforms you're using. So I agree with you, Brian. Finding what tools to use and really stick with can be difficult. And so for me, at least, I just love the Google apps, kind of their platform. I think it's really easy to use for the most part. But you can, when it comes to SEL check-ins, but really anything, any of these practices, you can use whatever tech feels the best to you, and it can be your lifetime tech tool if you want. Thank you for sharing. Okay. Oh, and I should have mentioned, so I removed Brian from this. So this is what you do to make sure if you want to use the Wheel of Names and not call on the same person again and again and again, you can remove their name. We'll do maybe 2 more. And I know this is not everybody, but just so we can sort of practice. Oh, Lynn. Woo, we have a winner. What's a rose and a thorn for you, Lynn?
Oh, wow. I don't know. Well, but besides planning for my wedding, I haven't really done much through, this entire break we've been having. But I don't really know I don't know what you would say what a thorn would be. Like, I don't.
Well, that's a great, Rose. Is there anything that you found maybe difficult during distance learning that was
Yeah, a lot.
challenging?
There was so much. Not being able to be with the kids because I'm a para, so I'm just like, what do you want me to do? How am I supposed to do this? I'm too far away from them, and I can't keep badgering them on Go Guardian. They're not near their computers. They're not going to respond. So, I mean, I liked our whole Ghostbusters thing. That was great. So if nobody's from North Salinas, we have a thing called Ghostbusters where if we see a student's not really participating, we can send not district, but our administrators like the student's name and stuff, and they can go over there and be like, call their parents and be like, hey, your kid's not online. Where are they? So I actually like that idea. That was cool. But not being able to be with the kids and making sure they're actually doing their work. But yeah.
I totally agree. I mean, there's a big difference between when you can literally stand right next to a student and say, hey, let's work on this together versus when you're trying to do that over Go Guardian. It's so challenging.
Yeah.
I agree. Thank you for sharing, Lynn. All right. Yes, Sarah, it has been very cool. I don't know what other North High folks think, but I thought it was really cool. Yeah, Julia's giving the thumbs up.
Yes, I'll unmute myself for that if you don't mind, because that was just the best thing. I mean, the kids would come back and they'd be like, I'm so sorry, Mrs. Jensen. I just like stepped away for a minute. I'm back. I'm here. I'm ready. So their parents would get that call and they'd be like, yes, we're back. So it was successful.
I had to call do 2 Ghostbusters for the same student within 5 minutes of themselves, and I'm like, come on, kid, like just stay near your computer or participate or something. I was like, I don't want to have to keep having them keep calling your mom and be like, participate.
Yes, so. Sometimes one of the best ways to get them is to just be obnoxious and nag. All right, let's go with one more reel of names, a rose and a thorn. How about, is it gonna go? Oh, just over to Al. How about you, Al Spencer? What's been a rose and a thorn? Oh, I love it. Rose, kids embrace distance learning and some performed better. Yes, I definitely saw that too. And a thorn, the personal contact with students. Yeah, it can be really, really hard. I agree. And thank you for modeling the chat version of sharing out. I will share with you all that with students. I know that for some students, they have a loud, environment, and just the chat is a little bit easier than unmuting. And also as we build up comfort levels. So when it comes to like SEL check-ins, that's something to keep in mind, comfort level and where your students are like physically at in their area. And I also love what you did, Al, and I encourage you to encourage students to do that, which is to type out their answer ahead of time so that they know when they're called on, they can just click enter and it's good to go, and you don't have to spend a lot of time waiting for them to type out their answer. And I would see that sometimes on Go Guardian, and they're like taking their time to type, and it can be a little bit tedious. So yes, love that. Encourage them to type it out ahead of time so that they're ready when you call on them. Yes, that is really good, Stephanie. Yes, I totally agree, Trisha. Exactly. They're not put on the spot. All right. So moving on. That, like I said, is a little kind of SEL check-in. For me personally, I do that every single class period at the beginning for my attendance. That's just what I do for my attendance. And yes, it does take time. It is not a quick, practice or a quick routine. Because I do call on every single student, but I really do feel that it is time well spent. It's an investment in our relationships and our community as a class. So I really love that. All right. And I do want to encourage you, if you have any questions at any point, please feel free to put them in the chat or unmute yourself if you want to know kind of like, wait, why are you doing this? Or what is one way that this looks in reality? I do like to include an example of my own, and I'll often start off and model. That way students kind of know what I'm asking. Sometimes I'll ask them a question and they won't really understand what I mean, or maybe I realize I'm using like old person language and they don't even know that phrase. So I'll model for them, and that kind of helps out. I have not seen that Chrome extension, and there's the sign and link. But if anybody else has, do please share. Okay, so kind of the why behind this session, and kind of why I would like to have this conversation with all of you is, I mean, if we look at literally the specifics of what needs to happen legally during this virtual distance learning, part of that included in the Senate Bill 98 was the idea of our daily live interactions with students is for content and progress monitoring and instruction, but also a really, really big part is connectedness. And so kind of that's what I wanted us to really ground ourselves in, the idea of connectedness. This is something that it can be really, really hard to build in the virtual environment. And I know for some of us, it really feels like we're just teaching at blank screens sometimes. And so it's not only difficult for students, but it's difficult for us to be standing there and talking at a blank screen and feeling like, are you getting this? Are you there? Are we even, you know, communicating? So I really, really want you to kind of think about just how you can build opportunities for connection. You can't force it, of course, but building in opportunities for connection into your day with your students can be a huge way to not only help your students and facilitate learning, but also help yourself feel maybe some of that connection that we're missing, that we usually get in the school day. We get when student pokes their head into the classroom at lunch and says, hey, or, you know, we get when we walk through the halls and a student says, oh, I remember being in your class. So really just encouraging us to think about how we can be purposeful and building in that connection into our virtual environment. And I love that, Sarah. Yes, the random name checking, that's a great idea. I love that because yes, sometimes it can be a little bit long, and sometimes you'll want to do like a quick check-in, just a yes or no answer too, because it can, you know, depending on where you're at as a class, it can be a little bit strenuous. And I agree, Jordana, for sure. Like these are all practices that building into life and school outside of pandemic are huge, just huge. Okay, so when it comes to social emotional learning, if you haven't already heard SEL or seen kind of that terminology, it may feel a little bit like, okay, the pendulum is coming back and now they're telling us we got to do this, that, and the other. We're adding another thing that we have to do in the classroom. And the way I think about it is social emotional learning, these areas of learning are intrinsically what students are already doing throughout adolescence and throughout young adulthood. We're building up our self-awareness, our self-management, our social awareness, our responsible decision-making, our relationship skills. That's something that's already happening, right? When you have an attendance policy, that is you helping them to facilitate the understanding of a responsible decision-making skill and a self-management and self-awareness skill. So this is already happening. What I like to think about is how to be really intentional about how I'm facilitating that learning regarding those different soft skills, those different areas of learning that are really going to help students be prepared for a life where they can know what they're feeling and figure out how to manage it. And who knows, as we've seen this year, we don't know what the future holds, and it might be really hard at points. We all have challenges. Our students will have challenges. And so really encouraging them to build up these skills, being purposeful and mindful about how we support them in understanding themselves and how to navigate challenges and successes. It's part of what we're already doing, and it's something that we can grow as well. So when it comes to social emotional learning, I think of it as it's something that's already happening, but how can I be purposeful? How can I be intentional about it? And really, if you look at all of your curriculum and the activities that you do with students and the lessons that you do with students, you're already encouraging their self-management. You're already helping them with relationship skills, but how can we give them tools that they might need along the way? Oh, and I will post the slides. There we go. And then also kind of like we've already talked about, right now, there is so much isolation happening. I'm sure you've talked to students. I'm sure you've experienced yourself the difficulty of not having the casual relationships that are just intrinsic to being in a school and being in a classroom and running into people in the hallways. For some students, the virtual learning, and we've probably seen this, I've seen this, the virtual learning is nice because especially for those of our students who maybe have high levels of anxiety or tend to just have difficulty in the classroom, it might be really nice to just tune in. So for some, it's a nice experience, but for a lot of students, it's just been really, really difficult, really hard. And so when it comes to social emotional check-ins and being purposeful with how we build community and classroom culture, helps. It does a little bit to help with our students and coping with a really difficult time. I mean, this this week alone, Wednesday alone, just shows us we don't know what is on our plates. So that is something that I just really wanted to highlight, and something that I kind of use as my own guidepost when I am trying to figure out how best to support my students, when students feel safe, when they feel supported, when they feel seen, cared for. That's when they're able to learn. And I love that quote. So down to the nitty gritty of what do I actually mean? Here's the secret to this session. It's not fancy. It's not magical. It's nothing difficult. Check-ins are just that, checking in, asking how your students are doing, asking what they think about things. I will share a little bit about how I use them in my classroom. So the first way is through the asynchronous Monday check-in. So this is something that we already have built into our schedule, right? We have asynchronous time. I have used that for weekly check-ins with my students. You don't have to do it weekly. You might want to do it quarterly. You might want to do it at the beginning and the midpoint and the end. But you can kind of decide what works best for your routine, your schedule, what works within your content. For me, it made sense that every Monday, part of my asynchronous lesson was doing a social emotional check-in, just so I could ask students how they're doing. So I can share with you what that looked like on the 30th of November. So, excuse me, I gave students the instructions to complete the check-in. And something that I really do like to highlight is I want them to write whatever they feel comfortable sharing. I've had some students say, oh, I don't really want to share. And that's totally fine with me. I am in no way hoping to like push them to get deep. This isn't therapy. This is just an opportunity for us to connect. So I do explicitly state that in my check-in. So I ask them to put their name, I ask them to fill in the blank, and I will be perfectly open in saying that I modified this from the teacher educator Chang the World at Chang the World. If any of you follow him, he is an educator in San Jose. So let me put his info there. There we go. Okay, so how do you feel this week? Check any and all that apply. I give students the opportunity to mark where they're at. Safe and hopeful, productive and motivated, fine and getting through it, tired and unmotivated, needing help, beginning to feel hopeless. I will share with you that I check these day of, and so that's why if it doesn't work for you to assign this every single week, don't, because if you can't check it to then follow up with students, I wouldn't want them to be in a place where they say, I'm beginning to feel hopeless, and then just because of timing, you're unable to check it for like a week, and then you're like, oh no, I missed something. So do be mindful about what really actually works within your routine. Because if I have a student who says that they need emotional help or they're beginning to feel helpless, I follow up with them immediately. And I share with them the information that we have at our school about how to get support. And so since I'm the intervention specialist at North High, it's convenient because I'm able to say, okay, here are interventions right here. But whatever your system or practice is, I know a lot of schools have the ability for students to self-request, so request assistance on their own, or to have a staff member request assistance for them. So whatever your process is important to know. Awesome. So yeah, if a student says that they need to reach out for emotional help or are beginning to feel helpless, sometimes that just means they're having a terrible day. And so I follow up with them and they're like, no, I'm okay. I just was feeling really down. But other times it is really a situation where a student kind of needs us to move up to the next level, you know, getting support from their counselor or our interventions. So, and of course, they only, need to put what they feel comfortable with. This is a required question, but you can decide what you want to be required, what you don't want to be required. Then I ask them about their classes, if they're feeling overwhelmed with any of them. That again just kind of helps me to gauge where we're at, because some kids were thriving and some kids were not. Then I ask them which class is causing the most stress or anxiety. And sometimes students will say, I'm not stressed or anxious, but the class that I'm working the most on is XYZ. So you could clarify if you'd like. And then the class that I teach was CC seminar. And so I asked them if they're okay with keeping up with our work, and then ask them for what information or help or support they need from me. Sorry, let me mark these real quick so I can move on. Okay. And I found that is really helpful because I've had students, for instance, I had a student who early on said, I would really like it if you emailed me my missing work. And so what I did was I followed up the next day with a lesson on how to check student view, because realistically, not every single one of their teachers is going to be able to send them their missing work every week. And then for me, what was feasible is I built in a routine where I sent all the students their missing work at the end of the week on Fridays. And I built that directly off of the student saying, hey, can you send me your missing work weekly? But I also gave them the power to know how to check student view, because again, it's not always realistic for a student to ask for every single teacher to send them their missing work every single week. So this is where you start to see gaps in knowledge or gaps in need that students might have. And maybe they'll tell you, no, I don't need any more support from you, I'm good. But regularly giving them the opportunity to ask for that, I love, because it gives them an opportunity to practice that self-advocacy. Okay, and then optional, I asked them if they'd like to share a high point. Since I did these on Mondays, it would be for the past week or a weekend, and optional if they'd like to share a low point. And I liked that because then I got to hear about, the student who just bought a new reptile. He loves having reptiles, and so he just bought a new reptile. Or the student who, maybe on the low part, the student who felt okay sharing with me that they found out a family member was infected with COVID. And so then I was able to know, okay, I need to be able to share with them resources, check in with them a little bit more. I agree with you, Sarah. Some kids, it really resonates for them, and they're like, this is great. This is an opportunity to check in. This is an opportunity to tell you how I'm feeling. For other students, they'll just they just answer and they're like, whatever, it doesn't mean that much to them. But I always think of it as, okay, I'm putting my hand out there, and I'm just going to keep on putting my hand out there. And if you want to reach out for help, you will, because my hand will be there. But if you don't want to reach out for help, that's okay. Like, that's totally fine. It's there in case you want it. Jacqueline, for the missing work, what I did was, and this is kind of, so what I did was I kept track on a spreadsheet of all of the assignments. And then when a student didn't turn in the assignment, I would just have right there their whole list. It was a little bit timely, I will admit, on Fridays when I would go through and I would just copy their column and send it to them actually via email, because most of my students, at least in that class, it was a norm of us to communicate by email. And so that was kind of how I did it, not via Google Classroom. But you could do it via Google Classroom easily. You could build in whatever routine works best for you. And yes, I totally agree, Bianca, that it allows you to really get to know who they are and what they're into. Found out about my student who had 15,000 followers on TikTok. I was very excited. The things that you learn, you would never necessarily know otherwise. And then I can show you after that check-in, I just moved into the regular stuff. This week's lesson had to do with money and budgets. So the rest of this check-in had to do with the actual assignment. So for me, what worked was doing this on Mondays. But if I was teaching, let's say, for instance, 3 classes, I would not have done every Monday, all 3 classes have a check-in, because I wouldn't have been able to be as responsive as I needed to be. So I might, if I was teaching 3 classes and had no prep, I might do a rotation where it was like the first week, it's just the first class. The next Monday is just the next class. And then the last Monday is the last class, so that I can kind of rotate. For grading, for me, I am one of those people who Jen Gaston was talking about for the grading for equity session. I use the 4-point scale. And so for the daily check-ins, the part that was graded was not the social emotional learning check-in. The part that was graded is the like the next page, this one I'm showing right now, the content. And for these, it was usually something that I included a rubric for that was showing that I'm grading for participation as opposed to the questions themselves. So for me, I did not grade my social emotional learning check-ins because I wanted it not to be something where students feel like they have to jump through like an emotional hoop and bare their soul if they're going to get a grade. Instead, it was just more of an opportunity. But since it was linked to the assignment itself, it kind of solved that problem of students not doing it, because the second part of the asynchronous check-in, at least for me in my class, was the content that they were graded on, and they got the rubric that showed what I was grading. Oh yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, making it part of citizenship, maybe telling students if you want to earn an O for citizenship, you participate in all of the check-ins. It's up to you. And then I also wanted to share that for others, they don't use Google Forms. So for instance, Alice Keeler, who hopefully you've heard about, if you haven't already, check her out because she has so many great resources, has this blog post that has to do with weekly check-ins on just the Google Classroom assignment. That's a way to do it. I'll show you later that some people use tools like Flipgrid, some people use tools like Nearpod, whatever it is that you're already doing as a routine in your class. I highly encourage you to just work with what you have, because that way you aren't having to reinvent the wheel. You're not having to learn a new tech tool. It's really more just about the idea, not the tech tool itself. Okay, so Monday, asynchronous. One thing to think about is this is an opportunity where you can be a little bit more detailed. You can ask for more questions if you'd like. It can be really personal so that maybe students and you are building that relationship. So it's teacher to student, student to teacher. And then again, like I mentioned, do make sure that if you're going to be asking questions where students might be sharing, you know, content where they're saying, I'm stressed out and I need help, that you're actually, you know, you're checking in with them. You're able to check in with them. So I would never say, do this in all of your classes every single day, because I don't know that necessarily that anybody would have the bandwidth to follow up on those and grade content and make lesson plans. So find what works for you within your kind of emotional and timely bandwidth. And then the other way that you can build in regular check-ins has to do with kind of like we did at the beginning of this, attendance check-ins, opportunities to give a little yes, no, quick answer either at the beginning or in the middle or at the end of lessons. So using things such as the Wheel of Names, the Google Meet polls, quick Google Forms, just the Google chat like you all have done already in this session. Excuse me, Google Classroom. I know some people like to use the stream on Google Classroom for students to discuss with one another and with you. So again, it's not about the tech tool, it's about the practice. So these ones can be short and less detailed. They can be either public or personal, thinking about when you have a public question, such as the one that we did at the beginning with the rose and the thorn, give students options and then be mindful that some of them won't feel super comfortable sharing deep things in public, especially at the beginning of the semester. I tell my students, and you don't have to do this, but it works for me. I tell my students, if you ever don't want to answer, just tell me pass, but do tell me pass, because if you say nothing and I never hear from you, then you're not participating. Part of it is also listening and practicing that relationship building skill of listening to one another as well. So I would sometimes have students say pass, I just don't feel like sharing, and that's totally fine with me. So again, those quicker, more public check-ins are an opportunity for you to have that, build that teacher to student relationship, but also the student to student relationship. They learn about each other, they talk with each other. It gets to be a point where you can see those relationships building that classroom culture forming. All right. So moving on to the how. What I did was I put together a Padlet, and I'm going to go ahead and put that in the chat for you, which you can open to check out lots of resources. And this is a Padlet that, double check and make sure that I have my sharing settings right, please. So let me know if I mess something up. But the idea is that you can also add to this Padlet if you find a resource or have a resource you want to share, have created a resource that you think would be helpful to others. So you'll see that the first column is check-in questions. So like the question that I used at the beginning, the attendance question, There are links to would you rather questions. Some of them are fun, some of them are deep. Oh, only for North High? Oh no. That is, let anyone, oh my goodness. Okay, I will show you here. I will show you here on the screen, and then in the middle of our break, I'll fix things. Don't worry, I will fix things. Okay, so I'll show you here now. I'll fix it. Then when we come back for the sandbox, we can fix it. See, sharing settings. That's the most stressful part of all this tech for me. So my example check-in questions, this one right here that I'm showing you right now, these are literally all of the attendance questions that I used for every single day of class. So if you wanted to do absolutely nothing, but just use these questions, you totally can. You can totally just go through every single day of class and use these attendance questions. So those are the ones that I use for my students, but there's also tons more if you have your own. Like I said, once I fix the sharing settings, you should be able to add your own. Next is tools and strategies. This is where it's not just straight questions. This is where I put a few things such as, you know, you might want to do a quick check-in with the emojis, which is something that I do regularly with my students and ask them to just fill in the number of the emoji they're feeling. Or you might want to utilize an emotional check-in on a Padlet and ask them to make a drawing or upload an image about how they've been emotionally. So this is suggestions of different strategies you could use to check in with students. So the wheel of names, as well as some articles. I personally use these relationship building activities, which I put together kind of at the beginning of the semester with different suggestions. One of them, as you can see, is Rose and a Thorn, Two Truths and a Lie, a few different examples. And one thing you can see is what do your students gravitate towards? Maybe I try a Rose and a Thorn in all of my classes. Meh, we don't like that one, but we really love Two Truths and a Lie. Then I go with what works best for them, what they like the best, because ultimately it's about them building that classroom culture in a way that feels comfortable and fun to them. All right, and then the next section has templates. So kind of like I showed you with my check-in that I use, if you want to say, okay, I'm going to build in check-ins, but I just really don't have the time to create a whole, you know, bevy of different check-ins. Here are some just examples that you can use. You can copy them, make a little edit so it has your name on it, and then you're good to go. So again, I have the one that I shared with you for my students, which I got from Chang the World. So we're not reinventing the wheel here. Examples for how to do it on Google Forms. Some people love Flipgrid, so there's some templates you can use for Flipgrid. And this one I also really enjoyed. This is another educator who literally has templates, and it's very, very easy to just copy and use them. Beginning of the day, end of the day, week. Some of them are geared towards younger students, but that's okay. You can totally adjust them based on what you need for your students. So these ones in the template section are just kind of plug and play. And then finally, the last column is SEL resources if you want to read more. So for instance, an article by NAMI, the National Alliance of Mental Illness, that has a bunch of resources on how students have been impacted by the pandemic. If you're a nerd like me and you like to read extra stuff, and I don't know, maybe you have time. I don't know who has time, but maybe somebody does. You could read through the SEL resources, some Edutopia resources, love Edutopia. As well as Castle, which they basically created the framework of social emotional learning. And they have some awesome webinars. Again, if you have time, I don't know if anybody has time, but maybe some person somewhere has time. So those are resources for you. I know that we're having trouble accessing this. So during our break, what I'll do is I'm going to make a copy of this so everybody can access it. And again, my goal is that you are able to add, if you'd like, to this Padlet. And like I mentioned, my goal is not for you to have to reinvent the wheel. And so just thinking about what you can take and how you can fit it into your current routines is the goal. Let me double check that I answered questions. I know lots of people are having access issues, but I'll fix it. Yes, the check-in Google form is right here. It's the first one that you'll see. Oops. Here's my editable link. I'll double check it. It's an editable link. It should be an editable link so that you can make a copy. And oh yes, Brian, please do share that speaker's info. That would be wonderful. And yes, I agree, Ingrid. Kessel, amazing, evidence-based, researched. It's a great resource. So what we're gonna do now is we'll have about 15 minutes for you to take your break. Maybe you need more coffee, and then we'll come back for the sandbox time. And so for the sandbox time, I will be here to answer questions or brainstorm with you, and you can brainstorm with each other. Really, I do want it to be kind of like a conversation. It sounds like we have people who have so much to share, which I greatly, greatly appreciate. You can also use that time to start making resources. So we'll take about 15 minutes, and then we'll come back at 11:15 for our sandbox time. Any questions before we take our break? All right. So I will see you all back at 11:15. And I'm happy to share, Tanisha. You're welcome. I'll put on the timer. Where is it? There it is. Alrighty, hi y'all. It is 11:15. So I'm gonna have us check in as people are coming back from their break. Which emoji best represents you right now? You can add your number to the chat, see where we're at. I'm a 15 because this Padlet. Take a few seconds to go ahead and share where you're at. Nice, Helen. Yeah, Gemelin, I'm also there. All right, take about 30 seconds or so.
Ashley, can you tell me right quick where you got the timer app?
Sure, yeah. Actually, I got the timer just through the Google insert on slides. So I went to the video and then I just searched for 15-minute timer. Oops. And then I like this one because it ends with a gentle beep sound versus this one that ends with a giant bomb explosion sound, which is jarring. Yeah. But they have a whole bunch of different ones. There's even, look, this is a new one, an Among Us one. That's kind of timely. So yeah, I just use what shows up here. And I usually go with the one that has the gentle timer ending. And then when you click on it and click select, it'll just show up in your slide, and then you can make it as big as you want or as small as you want.
Thank you.
Right. Yeah, you're welcome. So we've got some 11s, we've got some 5s, some 7s. Yeah, I can relate. A few 1s, I like to see that. This is another check-in I use with students pretty frequently, and as you can see, it's a very quick one, and it just helps to give a little bit of get a feel for where we're at as a class. The other one that I showed you earlier that only has 5, yeah, I will, Ingrid, is one that is really nice because it's a little bit more brief, but this one has a lot of different options. Okay, so now that we're kind of in our sandbox time, we do have the new sign in. So I'll copy that for you and put that in the chat. Yes, you do have to sign in for this separate section too. It's all broken down. This would be a good time to explore the resources on the Padlet. What I'm doing is very slowly copying everything over. If you are at North High or another school that has an organization account, well, I just learned, don't use it if you're hoping to share that Padlet with people outside of your organization, because it doesn't even give you the option, which really is frustrating to me. But again, keep calm and carry on. So you'll see that this Padlet is very slowly being copied over. So I'll put the new link to the new Padlet. The new Padlet right now is about, 1/4 of the way there, but I'm gonna add it, quickly. And I'm trying to put stuff in the template section more quickly so that you can see those templates. So for instance, this one, when you open it, oops, it'll give you the copy document option. So you can make a copy of my template that I shared with you earlier if you want to use that and edit it to your needs. So it just has all of the same things that I used on mine, which you can take, leave what you like, take what you like, take what you like, leave what you don't. That's how it goes. So I'm sorry that this Padlet is going to be, as you're exploring and checking it out, growing, but I'm just copying and pasting all those things over from the old Padlet. When it's done, it will look like this. So during the sandbox time, obviously do what works best for you. Oh, no worries, Sarah. I will put that right now in the chat. Where's my new one? Okay, there we go. That's the new Padlet. So this could be a time to explore the resources on Padlet. If you have resources that you've created or found that you want to share, you can also add them to the Padlet. Please feel free. This is open to you. Let me know if I get any of the sharing settings wrong again, though, because that is my forever challenge, getting the sharing settings. This might be a good time to plan your own SEL check-in routines or to reflect on what you already have in place. Oh, thank goodness. Thank you for letting me know. This might be a good time to think about, okay, what are routines that I already have that make sense to me? How can I maybe purposefully build in some SEL check-ins? This is your time, if you'd like, to create your own Google form or your own Flipgrid or other resource that you might use this semester. And also time to ask questions, either of myself or of each other, because I know so many of you have amazing resources and experiences. And then also brainstorm. If you have an idea and you're wondering, how might that look in reality? There might be somebody in here who's already tried it. So again, the Sandbox Time is your time to work. I am here to support. Does anybody have any questions to start off? And then I'll also share with you, just a heads up, sorry, we'll take about 30 minutes for Sandboxy, kind of do at your own pace what you need and what makes sense to you. And then in the last 10 minutes, if you've already been a part of this, you know this, if you've already done other days of the Slam, what our wonderful EdTech leaders, Jen and Brianna, ask is that you go to our best practices Padlet to share out anything that you feel comfortable sharing in terms of creations, ideas, reflections. We're the category 4, but the cool thing is you also will get to see what other people were learning too in their other sessions. And then we'll move on finally to the last bit, which will be the eval. So that's kind of where we're going. So about 30 minutes or so right now to explore, work, create, brainstorm, talk. Then we'll do a little bit of reflection. Lynn, did you have your hand up?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
As a para, what should we do, especially being in distance learning and how to connect with the students? I mean, that's something that's been kind of on my mind of how to do the social emotional stuff.
Totally. Well, I know it kind of depends a little bit on like what kind of a setup you have with the teacher that you're with, but I would highly encourage you, if you have certain students that you're working with specifically, to maybe think about how you can build in routines of checking in with them personally. There might be a few particular students that you work with regularly and you want to help build up that relationship. I don't see any harm in, even if it's as simple as thinking about, what do you want to use? Are you going to use the Go Guardian chat? Are you going to try to, use email? Are you going to use Google Chat? Think about a routine that makes sense to you. And then also, there's no saying that, I know different teachers have different relationships with how they work with their paraeducators, but if you were my para and you came in and said, hey, can I do a check-in with the students? I would love that. So even if you have something that you're gravitating toward that sounds fun and that sounds like something you might enjoy kind of leading in a small group, if that's something that you do with your teachers or with the whole class, I would highly encourage you to, what is calling you, Lynn? Because that I think is what is worth investing some of your time in. And if we have other pairs in here who have good ideas or teachers, I'm not the end all be all by any means.
May I ask a question, which I just did?
Yes.
Padlet. Years ago, I remember hearing about Padlet and I did nothing. And during this tech timeframe this week, Padlet has been a part of so much. I am going to use Padlet. So it seems pretty straightforward. Students share, can collaborate. What kind of course, I'm going to explore some more. What kind of monitoring, is that the right word? What kind of checks are in place? It's like, whoa, we don't want that to be there.
Yes.
Or what are some tips, quick tips for the novice in Padlet?
Oh, right. That is a great question. And let me show you. When you go on Padlet and you have the little settings gear up here in the upper right-hand corner, yes, they have some great things that they didn't used to have. So if you've used Padlet before, like I first started using it maybe 5 years ago, they did not have the ability to filter profanity, but I love that one because it's just automatic. So you can set that on. I set it on for y'all, not because I thought anybody would use profanity, but because it's just a habit I have, because I always turn that on with student Padlets because, like you said, you don't really always know. You never know. So that's nice. It replaces bad words with nice emojis. You can also use the require approval option, which I found helpful especially like at the beginning of a semester with the class, as we're getting a feel for, you know, who everybody is and what's appropriate and what our relationships are. I'll often start off, and then I'll get a feel. And usually by the end of the semester, I won't need to use that anymore because students will know that it's just not an option. But yeah, if you have the ability to kind of sit there and click approve, 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 I like using the require approval option as well. That can be hard if you're doing something where you're asking them to add to the Padlet outside of like class time. So if it was, for instance, part of your homework, that is kind of a pain. But in class, it's really helpful.
Okay, and we see the name. If it's anonymous, we can still trace to see which student posted.
So when you do the attribution option right here, they do have to be signed in for the attribution to show up. So often I'll spend some time at the beginning of the first time I use a Padlet, showing them how to log into Padlet so that they know that it's a norm. And often what I'll say is, if you want credit on this, I have to know who you are. So you have to put your name. And then it just becomes, again, one of the norms that we have where they're gonna first, I'll give them a minute or so to log into Padlet and then add to the Padlet.
Okay. So they sign in with their Google accounts, and Padlet is free. There is not something the district has paid for. Padlet Plus, it's what it is.
Well, some of your schools, like North High, like I have, they did pay for Padlet Plus. Today I learned that I'm not a super fan of that.
I need to check with my school.
Yeah, check with your school. But there's a free version. I have always used, Gemelin, thank you. Gemelin said all the schools have it. Awesome.
Excellent.
The other thing, oh, cool, Gemelin, thank you. I also know that if you're making your own personal ones, like on the free basic version, there's a limit to how many you can make. And I guess looking at what happened today, a reason that you might want to make your own on your free basic version is if you wanted to share it outside of your school, like in this case. But yeah, if you use your school one, then I don't think we have those same sorts of limits.
Thank you. This has been extremely, exceptionally helpful. Thank you.
I love it. I have really enjoyed using it for lots of different things over the years. And maybe I can actually show you. Yeah, these are the ones that I've used it for so many different things. Creating class values together, an assignment where students had to create email signatures and then post what their email signature looked like. Group rules, assignments like, I'll go back when I had English. Let's see if this is one that still has posts on it. Love or lust at first sight. We were doing Romeo and Juliet, and so students would write their opinions. So tons of fun new things. Oh, New Year's resolutions. That was a fun one. So I use it for more soft skill assignments and check-ins, but also content all the time. House on Mango Street research. That's an old one. So yeah, I love it. Oh, thank you, Ingrid. So you go to the teacher, under the district portal. Beautiful. Awesome. All right.
Hi, Ashley.
Hey.
I wanted to kind of check in and kind of reconfirm about Padlet. I'm not very experienced with using Padlet, and I was torn between having to approve things to make sure nothing inappropriate went up on the screen, and or not. And then with the attributes, I just wanted to make sure, like, if somebody puts something and it forces them to put their name on it, then I figure I can hold them accountable. But somebody was telling me that students could still post and have it show up anonymous if I had that on. Is that not true?
That is true. If they're not logged in, it'll show up anonymous. And that might be a case in which you might want to have the approval requirement. And so, like, say for instance, here, let me show if I can show you.
So there is, like, is there a setting to have it so that people can't post if they're not logged in?
So if you go under share and then you change the privacy of it, it does have some specifics about, like, it not being shared out to the public. So it's kind of specific to your class. Correct me if I'm wrong, somebody else, but I believe if you say people can write on it, they can write on it, whether they're signed in or not. correct me if I'm wrong, somebody else. But I believe if you say people can write on it, then just people who have access to it can write on it. But what I do in that case is I will, let me see where it says. Okay, so I'll require attribution. And if students are not logged in and they're trying to post and I have the require approval on, I'll just delete them and say, nope, you gotta be logged in. Nothing gets posted unless you're logged in.
Can I restrict the Padlet to only our district?
Let me pull up, let me see what you can do. Let's go and take a look. Share, change privacy. You can restrict it to keep it hidden from the public. You can require a password. That might be a good one. So you might pick a password that students need to have. I know that the ones that you have under, if you're using the account though, this is personal. If you're using the school account, it's just gonna be people at your school who can add to it.
So if it's a school account, I'm just trying to figure out, like, if they had to log in at their school address, and that would force them to log in, but it doesn't sound like that's the case.
Correct me if I'm wrong, somebody else, but yes, I believe that is so.
Does anybody know a way to somehow force them to, you know, if you have an attribute, but they can still post if they're not logged in, then that doesn't really force labeling.
That's where I would put require approval, and then I wouldn't let anything through.
Okay, and then I just have to click them off. And I mean, I was going to do that, but also I was a little concerned because, like, I've never administered that before. I've never clicked off and approved things, and it's something I wish we could have in our district. Is I wish teachers could have a dummy student account so that I could run through this and I could pretend I was a student logging in, and then I could see it show up, and then I could, like, approve or not approve it. But at this point, I'm a little concerned about going live, and I'm not sure I know how to approve them as they.
One thing that I do as a workaround, I first of all 100% agree with you. I think it would be really key for there to just be the student dummy account that we all try. Yes, Jacqueline, that's a great idea. A trusted student. And then also, if you do make it public and it's not just in our organization, sometimes I'll use my personal email account and log in there. Yeah, it totally is, Marilyn. Like, it would take them 4 seconds. But if you want, what I can do right now to show you is I'll change the settings to require approval. And if somebody wouldn't mind being my trusted student to try to add something, I can show you what it looks like.
Come
so
on,
I
Julia.
saved that.
Julia. Tell Julia to do it, Ashley.
I feel like you're volunteering, Jean.
I still have not even mastered this part, but I'm so much better with the advisory stuff now, thanks to you and Jen.
Yes. Okay, I'm gonna ask, I'll put the link in the chat. Would somebody mind being our fake student and clicking the plus sign? Yes, it says required approval. Yes, that is exactly what it should. Now where's my, okay, there we go. See it, it popped up right here and it says test post, and I can see what they're writing and I can either delete or approve.
Okay, nice, so that's easy. So I'll just see it on the Padlet.
Yeah.
I'll just do that. That'll be easy.
So I'll approve that one. So there you see it's there, and I'll delete that one. Let's say that was an offensive one. There you go.
Well, I appreciate that. It's just nice to see someone do it, because
totally.
I wouldn't. Yeah.
I agree.
So I have a check-in kind of question for you. Last semester, I did. When I first started class, I was going to take roll with the Google form. And pretty quickly I decided I kind of liked hearing their voices, and I started calling roll verbally. Yeah. But the Google, my attendance Google form kind of became like a check-in form, you know. So when I'd say it like, "Are you here today?" the responses were like, "Yay, I'm here!" Smiley face, smiley, smiley, smiley. And then another one like, "Yes, I'm here." And then another one like, "Meh, I'm here." And then the last one's, "Grr, I'm here."
I love that.
And then I'd always have a like, do you need help with anything? Is there anything you want to tell me question? And then I'd rotate through other questions about like, did you understand this from the other day? You know, what do you want me to demonstrate today? You know, just different things related to what we were covering at the time. And I sort of had some concern that like students would burn out on this, because I do it every single day. That was like, start a class, and I labeled it the attendance sign-in form. But this coming semester, it wasn't really an attendance form. It was more a check-in form. So I'm sort of wondering, like, maybe I should relabel it the check-in form. But then in a way, I kind of like labeling it the attendance form, because then they'll feel like, hey, I have to do this for attendance. What do you think? Should I be more accurate and call it the check-in form, or keep really calling it the attendance form?
I think you bring up a great point, where if it is the attendance form, then it's not like you have to add a point to it. Students just do it because they know that's how their attendance is being checked. Because one thing is, somebody brought up this question earlier, if you're grading SEL check-ins, you're grading like social emotional learning check-ins, sometimes that can feel a little bit weird, a little bit like forced getting deep. But instead, if you're saying, okay, this is my attendance check-in, this is serving two purposes. I'm checking in with you. It gives you a chance to check in with me too. And we're doing attendance. I think that's perfectly appropriate. And the kids who want attendance credit will do it.
I'll still call it the attendance form, but I am calling verbal role. And I did notice that pretty quickly, like a number of kids would start to kind of catch on and be like, oh yeah, he's calling attendance. I don't need to do this. So every once in a while, if I really wanted to see their responses, I would, I'd bring up the Google spreadsheet and alphabetize it by last name. And then as I called attendance, I'd check off and see, oh wait, so-and-so, you didn't fill it out yet.
Totally, yes. And I've found too, if you have an issue where you're using it for attendance, but kids are trying to like tune out, they're like, okay, I answered, now I'm gonna go do something, is I love the wheel of names, because they never know when they're gonna get called. And also, I love having them call on the next person. And so I'll say, okay, I will call on you, William, and then William, you're going to get to pick the next person. So they're essentially picking who's going next. And I would keep the names on the screen and kind of cross them off as we go through, just because it helps me keep track of who had already gone. But that's a fun way to kind of get people a little bit more engaged. And to be honest, you will have students sometimes who are like, okay, I answered and I'm going to go to the bathroom. I'm going to go make some food. I'm going to help my sister for a second. And I encourage students to let me know if they're going to do that, kind of like we were talking about earlier with the Ghostbusters, because I get it. I get that life is going on. I get that students are, they're dealing with a lot right now. They might have a sibling that they literally are kind of like shepherding through school at the same time. So I try to be a little bit mindful of that as well. But if you want to if you're ever having trouble, not just you, but anybody, with students kind of tuning out, I love using those, mixing it up, like you said, on how you call on them, because it just keeps them on their toes. And yes, Jacqueline, I'll ask them, I'll say, okay, I'm going to pass the mic to William, and then William, after you're done answering, go ahead and call on the next person, and they'll say the next person. But again, for me, what worked was, encouraging them to unmute and turn on their camera if they feel comfortable. But if they didn't, I was totally fine with people using the chat. Because I felt like for me, as long as we were having conversations and connections in the chat, that's still conversations and connections, and that was okay for me. Depending on your class, I know it's different for language, for instance, where you might, require the verbal practice, but however you make that work, for me, it was something that worked.
I found that in the morning Google form, the check-in form, that I got a much higher percentage response rate than I do in the chats.
Yeah, that's
like almost everybody would answer every single one of my questions in the check-in form, whereas in the chat, like I'd ask people to like answer a question, and some people would, but not nearly as many.
Totally.
So I think they're kind of anonymous in the check-in form, and then what I do every day after I take attendance is I'd open it up and I'd look at all the responses and go through and answer questions and kind of like address things without mentioning anybody by name.
That's perfect. I love that. Yeah. And something too that made me think of, did we do this? I'm losing track of my TechSlam days. Did we do this today with the waterfall or the chat avalanche?
I know we did one in another session.
That's
I like that.
Really right.
That encourages a higher response rate, I think.
Totally. Yeah. Where you have, and if somebody doesn't know what that is, it's where you ask the question and you tell them not to click enter in the chat until you say go. You give them about 2 minutes or however long you need to answer the question, type it out. And then when you tell them go, they all click enter at the same time. And it's like a waterfall of chats. And it's really nice because for those who might be nervous about putting out their answer and putting themselves out there, it's all at once. Oh, I love that, Jean. Yes, yes, explicitly stating names. So important, especially now that, you know, some of us, I have kids who I've seen their face maybe like once.
Okay, well, I'm going to mute myself. Thanks for chatting, and I'm looking forward to looking at some of the questions you ask and infusing them into my my morning check-ins.
Yay. Jacqueline, Flipgrid. Do students always have the ability to see their peers' comments? Let me pull up my Flipgrid. I'm sort of new to Flipgrid. I used it only twice in the spring. I liked it, but I had some students who didn't. Let's see. See if I can change the settings. Comments. I think it's either on or off. I think you have to turn them on and then yes, they can see them. Video and text, video or text.
Because I ask because sometimes I may want the information on Flipgrid, but I want to be the only one to see what a student is saying. And I know I had students, when I did not do that, they had the emojis covering their faces and things like that. So if a student knew this activity, Miss Ambrose is the only one who's going to see it, some would say that defeats the purpose of Flipgrid. I would disagree, because that's just one way I'm using it. Unlike my being explicit with students, this activity is one that your peers will respond to. Everyone has to respond to one more la-di-da-di-da. I used it twice, so I guess I need to have my test subjects from last semester, because I don't know. If I tell students no one else will see this but the teacher, I want to be honest.
Yes.
I don't think someone else knows that.
I would suggest, if you want to do that, turn on the moderation feature. Let me see if I have that on right here. Where is it? Oh yes. New videos and comments will be hidden from students until you activate them. So if you turn on the moderation feature, when they click, you know, when they submit it, you'll see it for purposes of moderating whether or not you wanted to put it on. But you can tell them these are going to be private and then just never approve them to be, not that they're not approved, but you know what I mean. Because I agree with you. I think that there are so many different ways to use these tools. If somebody says, oh, Flipgrid, it has to be for student-to-student collaboration, I agree with you. It doesn't have to be for student-to-student collaboration. It's students practicing their skills, maybe building up their relationship between you and them, and it's maybe not an appropriate time for them to share out with students. And yeah, you brought up a good point. I think it's really funny. I like when I'll tell them, listen, if you don't like how your hair looks today, use the emoji, that's fine. But if you want to have more of like a face-to-face with them and saying, okay, it's just going to be to me, and then I bet you will have some students who will feel comfortable showing their face a little bit more if it's not for their peers. And I've had a lot of students tell me that's one of the big reasons that they don't like the video screens on, because they just don't feel comfortable. It's different than when you're in a classroom. When you're in a classroom, you might be sitting behind everybody. Nobody's turning around to look at you. When you're on the screen, your face is there. Like somebody could pin you and look at you. So I get that. I get that that feels uncomfortable for some people. But yeah, I agree with you. Flipgrid can be used in a lot of fun different ways. Okay, I'm slowly making my way through updating the new Padlet, and I'll make sure that I double check too that I got everything. Didn't put things twice. I've done some of them twice, I think. But I love seeing people add their own resources and links. I think that's awesome and totally appreciate that. Yeah, I totally agree with you, Jacqueline. Yeah. yeah, and the bandwidth problem is real. We have that problem as teachers. I mean, I don't know how many of you invested. I bought a new laptop just because I couldn't with the Chromebook. And of course, what do we get as teacher credit and taxes? $250. That's not how much my laptop was. It's a lot. We're asking a lot of their machines and our machines.
How can I check to see if I posted something in a specific area on the Padlet? I just have to scroll through them.
Do you mean like to double check that you have something there?
Yes.
Yeah, you would have to scroll through it. Let me see if I have an old example to show you. This is one of the Padlets where there are different like styles. So this one that I chose for the SEL check-ins, just so I could have the different topics, is columns. But you can, let me pull it up for you. Just go here. When you're making a new Padlet, I'll do it within the right space. So if I'm making a new Padlet, I can choose if I want it to be in any of these different styles. And so then you can also choose if you want new posts to be at the top or at the bottom. So if, like, for instance, you were doing a Padlet that was a stream, you could choose if you wanted the new post to be first or last. And then as you start posting, it's just going to be a stream of topics. And so if you're trying to like cull through your Padlet to see where people's answers are, it'll sort of also depend on which option you choose. Okay. But yeah, unfortunately, there isn't like any special setting, although you can do the Control F, like just regular find. So for instance, you were looking for, I don't know, worksheet, it would help me find the, well, I guess there's no worksheets, the post that has that keyword. But yeah, it is a little bit annoying because you do just have to kind of scroll.
And once you're done typing, it's just a matter of, it's automatically saved. So yeah, it's there. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Oh, wow, Jane, that's so cool. I love that. Oh, that's so sweet.
Ashley, I'm going to read this one to you because it's from a boy in my class. And I really want to thank you and Jen for really pushing me to do this and to make these connections. So this is from a boy. First of all, he sent me a Christmas card. They didn't have to, but they could do it however they wanted. And I put my business card in there because one of the kids said, "Can you teach us how to address a letter, Mrs. Ashton?" And I was like, because some of them do it the wrong way and they don't know where to put the, so it was a good question, right? Dear Mrs. Ashton, I'm exceptionally grateful that I get to be part of your advisory class. The time we spend together is something that I look forward to every day. I enjoy the things we do together as a class, and advisory is something that I never get bored of. Thank you for your contributions to advisory and North Salinas High School as a whole. Your efforts are greatly appreciated by me and my peers. Once again, thank you for being my advisory teacher, and I hope you have a good break. Happy holidays.
Oh my gosh, I'm tearing up just hearing that.
This is a boy that I would have never spoken to, and he's kind of a fringe kid. He's definitely got, he's one of those boys. But it's funny because I only have 15, right? So I get to at least do some things, but I saved all the letters and then I share them with the kids. And so I've gotten 9, but Bill comes in and he does those brain teasers with them and they love those. I've read a bunch of books to them now. They love me reading to them. I've been reading Chicken Soup for the Teenage Soul, and they get to pick one of the chapters. So I put all the chapters up there and the kids can pick which one they want to hear, but they love being read to. It's funny when I ask them, okay, do you want to do it? Because we've been doing Inner Explorer. We do Inner Explorer every, at least once a week, and they love those. But it's funny to hear how much they love. And I've had a couple little prizes, they come pick up a little silly prize. And it's the only thing that has kept me sane is those 15 children in the situation as an athletic director with no sports. It's just been such a, and Julia has to do a lot of the technological stuff for me still, but I'm getting better. However, but it's like, it's so neat to hear from kids, and every one of them talks every day. We don't, that's not, it's like a non-negotiable. You don't have to have your camera on, but you have to talk every day. And it just, I just really want to thank you and Jen and the whole wellness team and everybody at North High for really pushing us to do this and not make it seem like a chore. It makes me sad when I hear teachers say, I don't want to do something for these 30 minutes. That 30 minutes I look forward to every single day. So that's what I want to say to you as a thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Okay, Jean, you need to give one of these presentations on your advisory class. That's so fantastic. I love it. Can I join your advisory class? Can you read to me? That sounds really nice. Oh, I love it. That's cute.
I read if you really want to read a book for kids, I'm going to tell everybody in here, because everybody in here seems like super cool about this. There's a book called The Quilt Maker's Gift, and it is really the definition of social emotional learning. And it's a children's book, but it is the most amazing book. But the kids, I have a bunch of books, and Riley, our youngest, is doing her teacher credentialing in the Sac Joaquin section. And so I read to her class last month. And so now I'm reading to their class once a month, and they love she has fourth graders. And so this one's about giraffe problems. And I have a bunch of giraffe, like what it means to be a Viking. I read the kids that one, what it's like. I read Inch and Miles, the John Wooden book on the Pyramid of Success. And I read Rainbow Fish, right? They love Rainbow Fish, and they just love being read to. Love it. Just love it. I don't know why, but they do. So
I love it. Well, I mean, if you think about it, it's some comfort getting to be a little bit, taken care of. And it harkens back to childhood a little bit in a time where we all need a lot of comfort.
Well, I think that's what it is. And they actually turn off their phone, and like, I'll even give them the choice the next day. Like, do you want to? No, read to us, Mrs. Ashen. It's like, all right. And I love reading to kids, It's just one of my favorite things. I used to do it in physical education about fitness, even some days, 5 minutes, of time. And it really is neat. So.
It sounds like you would be a great librarian.
I know. I might retire and be a librarian. When I do retire, I'm going to read to kids in the library. When I retire, that's definitely going to be one of the things I do at the new library on North Main. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to read to kids, because Julia will tell you, I love to read, just love it. And I love to read, different things. And I think
I'll have to check out when the reading hour is and come and watch you.
It's so much fun. It's so much fun. Julia's laughing, but she knows. Don't laugh at your mother, Julia.
That's such a good idea. Well, I can share with you that I've got a bunch of stickers. Oh, that's our time. Stickers and tattoos, some dinosaur tattoos, some unicorn tattoos, and I'll send them to students when they win our Fun Friday Kahoot. Love it. It's fun to just remind them to be kids sometimes. All right, so that is our Sandbox Time. I hope this was helpful for you. If you have the link, I will put it in the chat, to our SUHSD Padlet. This is where our intrepid EdTech leaders, Jen and Brianna, are asking for you to share out, if you feel comfortable sharing out a creation or an idea, a reflection on today's session. Much appreciated. And then here it is. Oh, thank you, Ingrid. I appreciate that. And then I will also go ahead and put our session eval link into the chat. And like I always say to my students when I do evaluations, please I will not, I'm not overly sensitive about evals. I appreciate the critique and the criticism very, very much because it helps me to be better at what I do. This is the first time I've presented at a tech showcase, but not the first time I've presented. So I'm excited about that. Maybe you can tell because it's not super duper tech heavy, but please do, if you get a chance in the next few minutes, fill in the eval. And if you have anything to add to the Padlet, they are much appreciated and help all of us to figure out what works and what we can do better. And thank you all so much for coming and for great conversations. Oh, let's see. Nice to see you too. I'm a new to Drew. That sounds like it might, is your internet having issues? Because usually when you click save up here, then you should be good to go, Patricia. There's the save button in the upper right-hand column. Once you click on that, it should save your settings. Thanks, Elizabeth. Oh, okay. Good. I'm glad you got it, Patricia. Thanks, Al. Thanks, Veronica. Thank you, everybody. And if anybody has any other fun ideas like reading to children, send them my way. I love it. Oh, and like I mentioned, if you ever want to contact, feel free to send me an email. That's my Google Voice. And then if you ever, for whatever reason, need to make an appointment with me, you can do so on Calendly. Of course. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy your Friday afternoon. Hopefully, you can do something nice for yourself. Oh, yes, definitely. Let me put it back in there.
Ashley, can you tell where I am?
What?
Can you tell where I am?
Yeah, at work.
My happy place.
It is true, yes. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at all. Well, and your office is so nicely decorated. It's an oasis.
It feels nice because I appreciate when people put the balance in life. I worked at home once. I was like, oh no, this is not going to be for me.
Every day during this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do too. I can't do it from home. I have to be in my classroom.
Yeah.
Better internet anyway, so.
It's true.
I'm in the same boat today, Jean. I'm here at school. But I usually do work at home, but today, actually for the last 3 days.
What did you put in their ceramic kit, Bill?
Yeah, I've been making 90 of these.
So what does each kid get?
I'm going to show you. Actually, I made a video earlier this afternoon to show the kids. So they get this bag of clay. I won't bother to open it, but it's got 3 pounds of white clay and 6 pounds of brown clay.
Okay.
And they get about 5 pounds of this nice soft recycled clay. And they get paint sticks, spacer sticks to roll flat sheets of clay between. And then smaller paint sticks so they can make either really skinny slabs or they can make slightly thicker ones by stacking them. They get a rolling pin, a little selection of tools, an extra nice, one of my favorite wood modeling tools, so custom tool. And then they get some popsicle sticks and wood craft sticks to fashion tools out of. You can sand them down to the shape you want.
You need to put the tool down a little lower. I can't see. There you go. There we go.
And I'm giving them this little piece of thin wire because it was decided that, let's see here. Here we go. This is a nice tool for cutting clay.
Oh,
but
yeah.
There's some concern that if it went home, they might kill each other with this. Oh, no. So that's why I gave them just a little piece of wire, because it would hurt their fingers killing someone with just a piece of wire. And then the other tool that was too scary to send home.
Down.
Students call it, it's a needle tool. Students call it the shank. But it's a pretty sharp, long, yeah, this was not cleared for sending home, you know, where people would have like younger siblings.
Yeah.
And so instead what I have in my kit is I have 6 paper clips.
Oh.
And after it took me like 6 or 7 tries, but I figured out a way to bundle paper clips together and like tape them up together to kind of reinforce to make a substitute for this tool that was not that was effective but not menacing. On my first try, I made a tool that was effective but still menacing. I showed it to my daughter, and I knew I hadn't nailed it when the response was, "You'd do great in prison, Dad."
Oh.
So that was a back to the drawing board comment. And but five paper clips or 6 paper clips bundled together carefully makes a pretty good substitute for a needle tool. So yep. So that's what I've been doing for 3 days now, and I'm almost done. I'm on the last kit right now.
The kids are really going to appreciate it.
The best thing they're going to get is this.
I can't wait to see. Ooh.
What am
I
I
cut
looking
one
at?
of these for every student.
What is